What is going on, boys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be ranking every single brawler in Brawl Stars from worst to best. So let's just get straight into it. Coming in last, number 76 himself is Frank, going straight to the F tier. I don't really have to explain this one too much. I feel like he's just been horrible for the longest amount of time, and you know they need to buff him in some way. Now I definitely don't want a Frank meta, but they definitely need to buff him. So coming in next to last, I don't think this is a surprise to many of you at all. It's going to be Kit. Kit is just horrible right now. A lot of times you can just know when he's going to use his gadget and kind of go invis, and then obviously super as well. He's just not really useful in any 3v3 scenarios. He's pretty good in Showdown, but in 3v3 he's trash. So yeah. Coming in the F tier as well. This is a little bit more of a personal opinion of mine than an actual ranking. But still, it's going to be Jeanette in the F tier. I just never really liked her. And, I mean, she's probably like a D tier brawler for most people. But I have her in the F tier just because I feel like she's so useless. Like, her shots charge and they just get longer, and it's just not very good. I just don't think she's really good at all right now. So, yeah, that's it. And that's also it for the F tier. Moving on to the D tier, we have a brawler that has been notorious for being the worst in the game, or one of the worst in the game, but is actually not horrible right now, and it's Hank. Hank has just been he's been the worst ever since he couldn't charge his bubble in the bushes, and he's just been so bad. I do think he has his place on certain maps in Brawl Ball, but other than that, he's just horrible, but he can definitely carry on some maps, so yeah. Next, we have Bonnie in the D tier, and Bonnie I just feel like doesn't have her place at all. I know she is getting a buff soon, so we'll see where that puts her in the next tier list, but for right now, she's in the D tier. It just takes her too long to charge her super, and she just is horrible in her tank form, so yeah. Coming in next up is sad, but it's true. It's Carl in the D tier. Carl is just kind of bad right now. One little buff and he could go straight up to like the A or B tier. I mean, he's just that, like, you know, versatile, I guess. I don't really know what the right word for that is, but he can change so quickly with one little buff. So watch out for a Carl meta if he gets a buff. Next, this one hurts my soul. It really does, but it's the right thing to do. But it just hurts so bad. It's Surge. This just hurts, but it's Surge, D tier. I'm personally like A to B with him, like my personal ranking, but obviously he's just a D tier brawler right now. He's not very good. There's definitely a lot better brawlers in the game than him, and he's only useful on certain maps. So yeah. Coming in, the last, rounding out the D tier. This one really is in between D and C for me, but a lot of other people have him in D, so I'll go ahead and stick him there as well, and that's Chester. Rounding out the D tier. I think he's a little bit underrated, to be honest with you. He's still obviously bad, but I think he is a little bit underrated. But we'll see. We'll see if anybody picks him up. Starting off the C tier, and honestly, she's lucky I put her here. It's Penny. I really think Penny should probably be a D tier brawler, but I've seen some people with her recently, and she seems alright. I mean, you can use her in more game modes than a lot of these brawlers, so that's why she's in the C tier, and that's really the sole reason. Coming up next in the C tier, we have Mortis. If I can find him. Holy, I'm blind, bro. Mortis. Okay, here we go. A lot of people have him a little bit higher than this, but for me, he's just not very good right now. I don't really see a place for him anywhere other than some Brawl Ball maps, obviously. He can be decent in Knockout on maps where there's not as open, like you can kind of sneak up on people. He can be decent there too, but other than that, he's just not really good. Coming in next in the C tier is Mr. P. Mr. P is just not great right now. He can counter some brawlers that are higher up, but if there's any sort of aggression and they get anywhere close to him, it's just a free kill most of the time. So yeah, that's why he's in the C tier. This one hurts because this is one of my favorite brawlers in the game, but it's a real ranking, so Daryl's in the C tier, and this one's really sad for me, but he's just not great right now. I'm personally pretty good with him, so I can kind of make up for it, but a lot of people don't like playing him. I barely see him in the game anymore, so yeah, C tier makes sense. Next up in the C tier is Gus. I feel like Gus just doesn't really have a place in this meta right now. He does not really do a ton of damage at all, and his healing isn't very good. He just doesn't really do anything great other than a shield. and that's not even that good most of the time. So yeah, he's just not that good right now, and that's why he's in the C tier. Moving on, this brawler also doesn't get much love, but he's decent, and it's Barley. He obviously has his maps and his modes, but if you're not in those maps and modes, he's horrible. So yeah, that's why that's really the short and sweet. That's why he's in the C tier. So next we have a brawler that has moved up a little bit, but still pretty bad, and that is Chuck. Chuck is pretty good. I think people are starting to figure out how to use him a little bit more outside of Heist. I'm starting to see him in Hot Zone a little bit. I'm also starting to see him a little bit, this will surprise you, in Knockout on certain maps where you can kind of put his post down in the middle. It hasn't really worked so well, but I still see him there every now and then. So yeah, that's why he's higher up than normal. Next up in the C tier, we have Byron. Byron is just not very good right now. He hasn't been good in a while. He's starting to come back a little bit up. I think he's getting a buff pretty shortly. But until then, he's definitely going to still be in the C tier for me. Next up in the C tier, this one really pains me to do, but it has to be done. It's Mandy. She's my favorite brawler, and she's really good in the right scenarios. But overall, I do agree with this ranking. She's definitely a C tier brawler. She's really good at Knockout and Bounty and Wipeout, but other than that, she's pretty much useless, so she's C tier. And rounding out the C tier, we have none other than Ash himself. I don't think this will surprise many of you. Ash hasn't been good in a long time. In fact, I think he was D tier for a while, but now I think he's moved up into the C tier. He's starting to be played a little bit more. I think he got a couple of buffs, so yeah. Starting off the B tier, we have Poco. Poco, he's just always the same, I feel like. I don't know. There's just something about him. He always seems to be either in the B or C or A tier, like in that range. But most of the time he's in the B tier. He's a very consistent healer. He's not great right now, but yeah. Next, we have a brawler that has moved up quite a bit recently, and that is Max. I'm pretty sure Max got a buff, and she's actually decent right now. I mean, she's not horrible. I still don't use her a whole lot, and B tier's pretty generous for now. I would probably personally have her in the C tier, but I've seen some other people putting her in the B tier, so I figured, hey, she does have a lot of speed. So yeah, B tier, but definitely lower. Next up, we had a brawler that had her moment for sure, and now it's kind of faded, and that's Nita. She was in the S tier for a good while there, and then she kind of fell off pretty hard. She's not as good as she used to be, and that's really why she's in the B tier. Coming in next up is a brawler that I just hate, honestly, and it's Tick. I'm going to start putting all the throwers in the B tier just because I feel like it really just depends on the map and the scenario, but most of the time you're going to be good with them in Knockout and those kind of modes. So yeah, but they're all pretty much about the same. It just is kind of pick your poison kind of thing. So yeah. So next up, Sprout. Pick your poison, Sprout or Tick. I don't like ranking throwers because I feel like it's really hard because they're always decent, but it's just hard to rank them. So, yeah. Next up, we have a brawler that was really good and kind of fell off a little bit, and that's Squeak. He just doesn't do enough damage anymore to compete with some of the other brawlers higher up, and he's just not as good as he once was, definitely. I think that's a given at this point. So next up, a brawler that was pretty good has fallen off a little bit, which is sad to see, and that is RT. I personally like RT. I think he's underrated. I think he really should be an A tier brawler, but a lot of people have him in the B tier, and that's where I'm just going to put him for now. The only real reason is because his super is pretty useless. There are some scenarios where it does come in clutch, but overall it's not that great. Coming up next in the B tier, a brawler that has been in the B tier for as long as I can remember, Tara. Tara has just literally been in the B tier forever. She was S for a while. She kind of went to A, and now she's B. I think she'll eventually go down towards the C, but for now she's in the B tier. I think she definitely still has her maps and modes and stuff like that, but she's just not what she once was. Next, we have Willow. Willow's a little bit better than some of the other throwers in the game right now. I think her control is underutilized a lot. I think she's way better than some people think she is, and yeah, I have her in the B tier. Next up in the B tier, this one pains me, but it definitely is Ruffs. I think a lot of people have him higher up than the B tier right now because he got a couple of buffs, or at least towards the top of the B tier. I have him towards the middle of the B tier. He's not great right now, but he's not horrible, and he can definitely be good when you need him to be. So yeah. Next up, we have Griff. Griff is decent. I feel like he's gotten a lot better recently. I definitely would not put him in the A tier because I still don't see him a lot, and I don't feel like he's useful in very many modes right now. So yeah. Next up in the B tier is Bull. Bull is decent right now. Definitely really good in Heist. Pretty good in Brawl Ball. He can be used on multiple modes. He's just really good. His Hypercharge is still pretty good, and yeah, that's why I have him in the B tier. Next up in the B tier is Primo. Primo got a Hypercharge. A lot of people are putting him in the A tier. I do not think he's an A tier brawler by any means right now. I still don't see a whole lot of him, and to be honest with you, his super is obviously one of the best supers in the game, but it's getting that super that's difficult, and I just don't think he's as good as people are saying he is. So yeah, that's why he's in the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have Sam. Sam is a lot better. I think he's a lot better than some people think he is. I just think people don't really know how to use him, and if you can stay alive with him and, like, you know, choose your kills wisely instead of just rushing in, he can definitely be a B tier brawler. Next up in the B tier, we had a brawler that feels like been in the B tier for a long time, and that's Eve. Eve is pretty good right now. I wouldn't say she's at her worst. I wouldn't say she's at her best, but she's all right. B tier, I feel like it's a good spot for her. Next up in the B tier, we have Grom. Actually, I think I'm going to switch Eve and Grom now that I think about it. Eve is just a little bit better than Grom is. But anyway, Grom, average thrower. I feel like he's a little bit better than some of the other ones in the game right now, just because I feel like it's harder to dodge his shots sometimes for maybe lower players. Pros, I'm not really sure because I'm not one, but yeah. Next up in the B tier, we have Meg. I feel like Meg could be a little bit better than the B tier in certain game modes, definitely, but she's a decent pick in almost any game mode, so that's why she's in the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have Gene himself. Gene got a little bit of a buff to his super. He's not bad right now. Definitely viable, but it's like obviously not as good as he once was, and he's just not as good as some of the A and S tier brawlers. Next up in the B tier, we have Edgar. I feel like Edgar's a little bit underrated right now, but overall, he definitely belongs in the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have Shelly. As far as 3v3 goes, she's a B tier brawler for me. As far as solo showdown, she's definitely better than that. I see a lot of people putting her in the A tier, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. I think she's a B tier brawler. So yeah. Next in the B tier is Pam. Pam is underrated, I feel like, a little bit. Her super is obviously really good. Her gadget's really good. She's just good at staying alive and can be a real nuisance on a lot of maps. Next up in the B tier is B. She's been in the B tier as long as I can remember. She's just not great. She's good in a lot of game modes, not great really in any of them. So yeah. Next up in the B tier is Brock. A little bit better than B in my opinion, just because he's a little bit more versatile with the gadget, and his super does more damage if you line it up right, of course. So yeah. Next up in the B tier right now, this is a tough one, but I have to put Crow here. I personally think Crow could be a little bit better than the B tier with his Hypercharge, but a lot of people have him in the B tier. He's really good in Heist right now, so yeah. Next up in the B tier is a brawler that I feel like is being a little bit underrated, and that's Gale. Gale is really good right now. His slow is always so annoying to deal with. He's just an annoying brawler to play against. Whenever I see a Gale, I'm like, really, man? So as far as like how OP he is, he's not great, but he's just annoying to play against. That's why he's in the B tier. Rounding out the B tier for me is Rosa. And Rosa she's underrated right now. A lot of people have her lower in the B, maybe even in the C. I personally have her pretty high up in the B tier. So yeah, I think that's where she belongs. Now, this may be a little bit of an overstretch, I feel like, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to put Doug in the bottom of the A tier. He's just good right now. He may be a B tier brawler. I may be overstepping a little bit, but he's just really good, and I feel like he's useful on a lot of different maps. And he's definitely not as good as Jackie, in my opinion. I think a lot of people also have Jackie in the B tier. I have her in the A tier just because there's some maps where she just dominates, and there's no killing her. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, this is a tough one, but I think it's Buzz. His Hypercharge is obviously really good, and that's really the only reason he's up here, because his base is not great, but his Hypercharge really makes him a lot better than what he is. Next up in the A tier is Ems. I feel like a lot of people have her in the B tier. She's just a personal brawler that I think is better than a lot of people say she is. Like, I think she's really useful in a lot of different modes. Obviously not really in the longer range maps, but in the shorter to medium range maps, she's really strong, and I think people just have been underrating her for the longest time. So yeah. Next up in the A tier is Stu. I think some people have kind of gotten down on Stu recently, but he's just still really broken. I think a lot of people even have him in the B tier now, and I think in Kairos' last video, he put Stu in the B tier. And I was like, man, I know he's on S tier, but B seems a little low for him. So yeah, I have him in the A tier. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, we have Sandy. Sandy's always decent. I feel like he's just good pretty much all the time. I mean, he's not great in some like longer range maps, but definitely kind of like M's in the same boat where in shorter range maps he thrives. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, we have Bo, and Bo is actually really strong in a lot of different maps right now. He's just good. I don't know what to tell you guys. I think a lot of people like nerfed him and they're like, oh, he's kind of bad, but I feel like he's come back a little bit. Like, his damage is really good and it's hard to kill a Bo. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, we have Gray. Actually, I'm going to put Gray below Bo. Originally, I had him above, but now that I'm thinking about it more, I just don't think he's quite as good as Bo is. But Gray can be useful in a lot of different maps. He's great right now. His pull is obviously really good if you can hit it. So yeah. So this one may be a little bit of a shocker for you guys, but I actually really like Otis right now, and I'm definitely putting him in the A tier. A lot of people have kind of gotten down on Otis, but his super is really strong. His gadget can be useful, and he's just really good. It's hard to miss his shots. He's just really strong, and I really like him right now. Next up in the A tier, we have Maisie. A lot of people have Maisie down a lot. I think some people even have her in the B tier. She's personally an A tier brawler for me. I still think she's really strong with her super and her gadget. People usually know when it's coming, but even still, she's a really good threat. Next up in the A tier, I have a brawler that's broken right now, and that's Dynamite. The only reason he's not in the S tier is because he just takes a lot of skill to play, and, you know, some people don't have it, so that's why he's not in the S tier. Next up in the A tier is Lou. I think Lou's really strong right now. I think he's really useful in a lot of game modes, even Knockout. I think people are underrating him big time. I just can't stress it enough. He's still really good, and people they seem to be underrating him a lot. Next up in the A tier, we have BB. BB is really strong right now. Obviously, with the hypercharge, she's gonna pretty much move up automatically. So yeah. Next up in the A tier, this is a tough one, but it's gonna be Lola. So this one's probably a shocker. I think a lot of people have her in the B tier. I maybe shouldn't have put her up this high, I will admit, but I do think she's an A tier brawler. I just think she's so underrated. Her ego is really strong, and it can block out a lot of these other brawlers' abilities. I just think she's really strong and really underrated right now. Next up in the A tier is Rico. A lot of people also underrate Rico, and I just think he's an automatic A tier, at least for me. He's just really strong. His gadget's really strong. Both of his star powers are good. He's just a really good brawler right now. Next up in the A tier is Jackie. On any short range map, she is one of the best picks in the game, if not the best pick. I think she's really strong right now, and people just don't really realize. Next up in the A tier, I'm finally on the train of 8-Bit. I have been playing against 8-Bits recently, and if you're actually any good at 8-Bit, he is broken. His super provides a lot of buffs for allies, and I think if you're playing a good brawler with 8-Bit, he just becomes so much better. A lot of people have him lower right now, towards the maybe top of B to low A. I think he's a little bit better than that. I think he's very useful, and yeah, he's in the top of A for me. Next up, we have Belle. Probably a shocker for some, but Belle's just pretty good right now. I feel like she's been underrated for the longest time, and sometimes it takes brawlers to get a hypercharge for them to actually, get some kind of popularity. So yeah, I think she's definitely in the A tier right now. And rounding out the A tier for me, it's going to be Piper. She's not quite S right now, but she's really strong. She's a little bit better than Belle, and that's why she's in the A tier. So these are going to be the S tier brawlers. These are basically the best of the best. Some of these are going to be a little bit controversial just because I wanted to throw in some brawlers that I think are being really underrated right now. And they're not really S tier brawlers. At least one of them is not. The rest I think are for sure. But the first one I want to start out with is a brawler that I think is being really underrated, and it's Buster. I would definitely put him in the A tier, okay, but I did want to save him for the S tier because I figured people would skip this part. I think he's really, really underrated. I think he's probably the most underrated brawler in the game right now. I still see people thinking, oh, Buster, he got nerfed. The nerfs don't really matter. He's still really broken. I don't know. I just feel like people are really underrating him, so I had to put him up this high. Next up in the S tier is a brawler that has been in the S tier for a long time, and that's Miko. Don't really have to explain this one. He's just really good. Next up in the S tier is a brawler that I really like now, and it's Nanny. I didn't like him before, and I started playing with him, and he's just so good. I think he's broken right now, out of his mind. The Return to Cinder gadget is maybe the best gadget in the game. He's just so good. So yeah. Next up is Jessie, obviously with the hypercharge. That's really the only reason she's up in the S tier. So yeah. Next up is going to be Fang. A lot of people have him a little bit lower than this. I still think he's broken right now. I think a lot of people have him in the A tier. Don't buy it. I still think he's an S tier brawler. Next up in the S tier is going to be Pearl. A lot of people have moved her down from the S tier. I still think she's an S tier brawler. She's good almost anywhere. So yeah. Next up in the S tier is going to be Spike. Old reliable, old faithful. He has a hypercharge. He's really good. He's basically Brawl Stars poster child at this point. They will never nerf him. So yeah. Next up in the S tier, we have Colette. Colette's really strong right now. Her hypercharge is probably the best in the game. It's so good in Heist. It's good in Brawl Ball. It's pretty much good in any mode, honestly. Next up in the S tier, we have Amber. Amber is just broken. I don't really think I even have to explain this one. She's just ridiculously broken out of her mind right now. Next up in the S tier is Colt. If you have any sort of skill with Colt, he's S tier. If not, maybe A to B, but for us skillful players, he's definitely S tier. Next up in the S tier is going to be Melody. I'm not really sure if she's going to be this high, but this is where I've seen a lot of people put her, so I'm just going to go ahead and, I guess, put my vote with everyone else. I think she's really good right now, or she will be really good when she comes out. This is tough. We're down to the top 5, but for me, it has to be Cordelius in the S tier. He's really good. He's definitely a top 5 brawler for me right now. He's really strong. I don't even really think I have to explain this one. His hypercharge is broken. Next, we have Angelo. I think Angelo's just slightly more versatile than Cordelius is. That's why I have him in the S tier. That's really the only reason he's better than Cordelius. Next, we have Charlie. Charlie is just broken right now. I don't even have to explain this one. She's just so good. Her hypercharge isn't the best, but her just basic, attack and super makes up for it. So yeah. Next up, this is so hard, but for me personally, I think Leon is the second best brawler in the game right now. He's so strong, it's ridiculous, but I just feel like he's not as good as Larry right now. I think some people have Larry over or Larry under him over Larry, but I can't do it. I think Larry's just too good right now. I know he's going to get some more nerfs, but he is definitely at the top of the S tier. My S tier is a little bit big, but I did want to kind of include a lot of brawlers that I thought were good and maybe being underrated right now. So yeah, this is the full tier list. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I spent a lot of time doing this, so a like and subscribe would be appreciated. I don't really ask for a whole lot, but yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Peace out.